7.
Good afternoon. My name is Scott Croy. I'm from Chicago, Illinois. Mr. Buffett, could you please describe the situation, the extent, if any, of Berkshire Hathaway's investment in Finova Group earlier this year? Finova's back appears to be against the wall.
Yeah, well, it's worse than against the wall or in Chapter 11. But that was all contemplated, obviously. Finova is the old Greyhound leasing company and grew to about $13 or $14 billion in assets. And then just about a year ago now ran into funding difficulties. And when you run a highly leveraged finance business and you run into funding difficulties, they compound on you very quickly. You know, confidence is a real coward. I mean, it runs when it sees trouble. And in a finance business, you're constantly faced with refinancing old obligations, and you have commercial paper out and all of that. So there's no honeymoon period when you get in trouble in the finance business. And we've even seen big ones in the past, like Chrysler Financial and all of that. I mean, it can strike anywhere when confidence disappears. And so that hit Finova about a year ago, and it became clear not that many months later that Finova would have to either be sold or reorganized. And I think there were attempts made to sell the company to other finance companies, and even a couple of little portions of the portfolio were sold, but they didn't make a sale. And when the bonds started selling down to prices that I thought were very attractive in the fall or whenever it was of last year, and by attractive I mean I thought that if they went into bankruptcy, that the assets were considerably greater in relationship to the liabilities than indicated by the market, we started buying bonds. And we publicly announced that we bought $1,428,000,000 face amount of bonds or bank debt. So we, out of $11 billion of aggregate debt at Finova, we own $1,428,000,000 face value. And we bought those at prices that looked attractive then and look attractive now. And it became clear, it was clear all along that they're either going to sell or go into bankruptcy, and it became clear that they weren't finding a buyer as time went by, and so it became very likely that they would declare bankruptcy sometime earlier this year. One of the reasons being is they didn't want to use the available cash to pay out the creditors whose money was coming due tomorrow, and thereby shortchange creditors whose claims were due at later dates. We thought perhaps somebody would come in with a plan of reorganization, and they got very close to where they were, in our view, they were going to default. And so we jointly with Leucadia, in a joint venture called Berkshire, put forth our own plan and made and arranged a transaction. But they are now in Chapter 11, and there will be plans presented to a plan or plans presented to the court in short order, and then the court will determine. Charlie may know more about exactly how bankruptcy works than I do, although I don't think he's had any personal experience with it. That a plan gets submitted to creditors for approval, and we will have a plan which has been outlined in the press and will be submitted to the court almost certainly within a week, and when you can read about it at that time. And then we will see whether anything else happens. I mean, it may be that somebody else comes in with a plan. It may be that our plan is approved. And if our plan is approved, it involves a significant additional investment so that an initial payment can be made to the present debt holders. And then we'll see what happens. We feel very good about Berkshire. We think Berkshire, we think the Leucadia part of Berkshire brings a lot to the party in terms of efficiently managing the assets that are there. I think it makes it, when somebody gets in, or an entity gets in bankruptcy, it makes a lot of difference how it's handled. I mean, there can be a lot of wastage of assets in bankruptcy, or there can be a reasonably efficient way of handling it. And we think that the Berkshire arrangement will maximize the value of the assets, and we think that's important, but we'll see what happens. I think our position is going to work out fine. Charlie?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting transaction, and you would hope there would be more of it.
There will be.
I mean, no, I mean more, not more bankruptcy, but more cures of bankruptcy following this model. I think it's a very intelligent model and a very clean, simple, prompt way of cleaning up a corporate mess. And I hope the rest of the world feels about it the way I do, and that the judge and other people concerned will say, thank God, and we want this one to go through, and we want more like it to happen.
That's what we tried to do in Solomon, incidentally. I mean, we tried to behave in a somewhat different way in terms of a corporate crisis than had been typical, and we hoped that if that got a good result, that might become a model that people might gravitate toward in future problems, because there will be future problems. And we're in the unusual. We are the largest creditor of Finova now, so we have more money on the line than anybody else, and we don't have an interest. You know, our interest is not primarily in getting fees or extending the bankruptcy or trying, any of that sort of thing. We want to get the greatest realization of assets as possible, and the swing in that between doing it right and doing it wrong, could be measured in the billions.